And it's T-minus 1 week until Election Day 2022, and election authorities are scrambling to make sure there are enough election judges and poll workers ready to work. Conspiracies and attacks on election workers have had a chilling effect on recruitment, and just today, the State Board of Elections has warned of a text message disinformation campaign aiming to sow confusion about Election Day polling places. And joining us are Max Bever, Director of Public Information for the Chicago Board of Elections, Stevie Valles, Co-Director of Chicago Votes, and Isarelia Hernandez, Election Judge Supervisor for the Lake County Clerk's Office. Welcome all of you here to Chicago tonight. Max Bever, I want to start with this news that came this afternoon from the State Board of Elections warning of a group called Voting Futures sending robo-texts confusing voters. What do we know about this?
So we've just received a few complaints ourselves, and that's been increasing over the last few days. Voters have been receiving a text message, sending them to a wrong polling place location, sending them out of the city, sending them to Calumet City. That's the first thing you should know as a Chicago voter. If someone's trying to send you outside of city limits, that's not the right polling place. So the first thing I want to say is if you are looking for the most up-to-date election information, always go to your election authority first. In the city of Chicago, that's Chicago Board of Elections, or you can go to the Illinois State Board of Elections, or whatever your local authority is, or their social media pages. They're going to be the first stop shop for accurate information.
Any clue who's behind this campaign?
I'm afraid not. We've reported our complaints over to the Illinois State Board, and we hope we can find who's at the bottom of this.
And this is a problem happening nationally, as I understand, so there will be several authorities, I'm sure, looking into this. Steve Valles, what kinds of misinformation campaigns are you seeing, and what's the best way to combat them?
Yeah, just in general, I see a lot of communication that's inaccurate coming from a number of different sources around when you can vote, who's eligible to vote, what you need to vote, where to go vote. And obviously, this can contribute to voter apathy and diminish the amount of people who are able to actually cast their ballot, which does nothing good for any of us. A lot of the work that we do is around presenting accurate information to specifically young voters, but the information we present is also helpful to voters of all ages. We put together a voter guide this year in order to help people know when to vote, where to vote, how to vote, as well as a list of all of the candidates who are on the ballot and the issues those candidates have direct influence over. So hopefully we've been able to successfully counter the misinformation with accurate information and will contribute to more voters being able to cast their ballots and not less.
And Isarelia Hernandez, the other question this year is, will there be enough election workers, judges, poll workers to staff elections up in Lake County? Are you confident that you'll have enough up there on Election Day?
Well, we have enough judges for all of our polling places, but it's not where we would like it to be. It's not optimal. Typically around this time or for a November election, we're aiming to have about 1,100 judges right now. And that includes, judges to allow for a rotation and all the judges to take a break throughout the day. Right now, we were at about 900 judges. So again, it's not optimal, but we continue to recruit up until the day before Election Day. We reach out to all of our judges to see who might be available, but as it stands right now, it's doable, but again, it's not optimal.
Isarelia, why do you think it's harder this year to get the full staffing?
There's several reasons. COVID continues to come up. So COVID continues to be a concern for our election judges, especially the population of judges that we have. They're very concerned, very afraid of COVID still. And then there's also some concern about being harassed at the polling places from voters. And again, going back to that misinformation, the judges are just there to facilitate the process. We can inform the voter as to procedures and answer any questions, but when it goes beyond the scope of what we've taught them, it's difficult. And then sometimes we have to explain to judges, we're not there to, for this to become a confrontation. If you need to seek out assistance, call the local authorities.
Some of this probably stemming from 2020 and the false claims of stolen election from the former president and many in the Republican Party. What about In Chicago, Max Bever, are you fully staffed, and have you seen judges worried about harassment and intimidation?
We are fully staffed, in fact, overstaffed at this moment. We're doing in much better shape than we were in the last primary election, and that's due to recent redistricting as well as precinct consolidation. Previously in Chicago, we needed over 10,000 election judges. Now we need 6,450. So we're good, almost 1,500 over that number, but we are preparing for resignations, those last-minute dropouts. We're also looking for...
Always seems to happen.
It does always seem to happen. You know, election judges are the most critical part of a functioning democracy, but unlike jury duty, it's not mandatory. So it is basically a volunteer system. Election judges are paid up to $230 in Chicago, but it's a long day, and it requires a lot of training to do so. And it is something where election judges can make that snap decision and say, maybe this isn't worth it for me today, especially if they're reading the news, especially if they're feeling insecure about being in a polling place. But this is why we wanted to overstaff our polling places ahead of the November 8th election in Chicago, make sure that we've got enough staff, we've got enough support, and that people feel safe.
Stevie Valles, speaking of feeling safe, there have been some reports nationally about intimidation happening at places like ballot drop box. Are you worried about voter intimidation here, and have you heard any specific threats?
I think voter intimidation is something we should always be diligent about trying to prevent, no matter where the election is happening and when the election is happening. Our city, the state, the country has a long history of voter intimidation, and we always need to remain diligent in ensuring that doesn't become something that's a part of our voting culture. I think that, you know, making sure election judges are trained in such a way to support and ensuring that voter intimidation is not something that is persistent at the polling locations is really important. Partnering with community groups like we do, like 866 Our Vote and the Election Protection Hotline, and the lawyers over at Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, to ensure that voters know their rights and they aren't being told the wrong thing at polling locations and deterring them from casting their ballots. This is always something that we hear reports of every election cycle. But I think we can continue to be proactive in making our systems more free, fair, and safe by either passing policies, doing more intentional trainings, and ensuring that bad policies that could put people more at risk don't get passed in the future.
And indeed, the FBI and the Department of Justice have hotlines set up for Election Day as well. Isarelia Hernandez, both parties talk about having watchers at the polls. Who's allowed to watch, and what exactly are they allowed to do?
Poll watchers are allowed to observe the procedures that take place in a polling place before, during, and after. They are not allowed to handle materials. They can challenge a voter, but they are not part of the decision process. That's left up to the judges. They're not allowed to assist the voters within the 100 feet electioneering zone. So they're there for more for observational purposes, but again, not to interfere with the voting process.
All right, so we wish you all a safe and successful Election Day. And then, Max, in Chicago, you got to turn around and get ready for the municipal elections just a couple months later.
We do. We've got 2 in after this. And if you allow me just one more, Paris, we are looking for bilingual election judges. So if you speak a different language than English, please sign up. Go to pollworker.chicagoelections.gov.
That has been an issue this year. Fewer precincts with a multi-language service for non-English speakers. So that is a problem. Thanks for bringing that up. And our thanks to Max Bever, Stevie Valles, and Isarelia Hernandez. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.